Hey y'all, my name is Priscilla and welcome back to my channel, Bookie Charm. For today's video, I'm going to be telling you all of my favorites that I read in 2021. So in the past, I've done favorites videos and usually limited myself on the number of books that I can consider favorites for the year, just because if I didn't, I would go on for a while. But I'm choosing to go on for a while because I haven't told you about a lot of the great things that I read last year. So I have about 16 books, I believe, is what I ended up with to tell you about. I have separated this in genres and / formats. You'll see what that means. So you can probably click around in chapters if I set that up right. And I will also be linking all of the content warnings and book titles in the description box below. So feel free to check that out if you need to, if you'd like to. But 16 books is a lot to get through, so let's go ahead and get started. And we're gonna start off with some poetry. The first book that I actually read in 2021 actually ended up being a favorite. And I want to tell you about Finna by Nate Marshall, because this book, although the details are a bit fuzzy to me, I remember really enjoying how lyrical and just really smart Marshall is in terms of using AAVE and making it sound very like hip-hop like and really emotional and vulnerable at the same time, because he focuses a lot on Black culture and masculinity. And I just really thought that he has created some really well-crafted poetry that really tugs on your heartstrings at times, but is also celebratory of Black culture and of where he's from in Chicago. So yeah, I don't have a lot more to say about this. I just have those faint memories of really loving this work and wanting to dig more into Nate Marshall's backlist. So that's Finna. And of course, I mean, we don't have any surprises here. I mentioned this in my mid-year book freakout tag, but my other poetry favorite was We Are Owed by Ariana Brown. Again, it was a favorite then, still a favorite. Ariana Brown writes poems about Blackness and queerness, especially within Mexican American spaces. And their work is just really eye-opening for me. It's something that has really struck a chord with me and that I have taken to heart, because let's just be honest, non-Black Mexican folks, I can speak for those folks, are just really bad about the difference between race and ethnicity. And I think that that is something that non-Black Latinx folks need to contend with. And that's what this work made me do. She uses a lot of history to illustrate that, and also speaks a lot about loneliness within Mexican and Mexican American spaces because of anti-Black racism. So yeah, very formative for me, I guess I could say. And I really would encourage you to seek out her work, because she's just really doing amazing work. Has a lot of amazing resources on her Patreon. If you're a writer, if you're into poetry workshops and really building your craft, really just encourage you to read their work, support them. So that's Ariana Brown and We Are Owed. The next genre books I'm going to be telling you about are romances. And thank you so much to Yvette for getting me White Whiskey Bargain by Jodie Slaughter, because this is a romance book I think I read over the summer, middle of the year. And after I read this, I knew that I wanted to reread it eventually. It's an independent published book by a Black romance author. It features a Mexican American hero and a Black heroine, and both of them are the heads of their family's moonshine businesses in Kentucky. It's a marriage of convenience trope, I don't know why I keep wanting to say marriage of inconvenience, but there's that going for it, with the hero especially wanting to make the marriage work. Just a very kind-hearted person that wants to make the marriage work because of a failed previous marriage. That was super sweet. And I think that also the moonshine aspects of it, you know, the family rivalries, the fights and the tension there, the action was completely unexpected, along with a really sweet blooming romance. So all that worked for me, and I need to read more Jodie Slaughter, because this just did everything it needed to do for me at the time. I'm a huge fan, so that's White Whiskey Bargain. And next up, I have to tell you about definitely Xeni by Rebekah Weatherspoon. This book was so satisfying, so much fun to read. It's another marriage of convenience trope, because I told you I love them. And it's the second in Rebekah Weatherspoon's Loose Ends series, although it very much stands alone. You don't have to read the first in order to get along and get along with the story and understand what's going on. But it starts off with Xeni, whose grandmother, I believe it was, has just passed away. She's going to the funeral and trying to get her inheritance, but finds out a lot of family secrets that come out. And her grandmother has stipulated in her will that she needs to marry this man named Mason, who is this very sweet Scottish man. In order to get her inheritance, she has to marry him for 30 days. She's pretty much matchmaking from the grave. And I thought this book was just so good, so well written, with the emotional parts of dealing with some family traumas. Both of the characters are actually bisexual, which is, I think, done very well. Yeah, I just really love this story with two main bisexual characters and also having to deal with some of Xeni's family problems, as well as Mason biphobic and homophobic family as well. And I thought it also did really well with the emotional aspects and some of the family trauma and estrangement issues that are just explored in here as well. And if you know Rebekah Weatherspoon, I've read some of her work before. Her sex scenes are really great. This is no exception. So I really enjoyed this. Love Xeni so much. The cover is beautiful. I love the colors there too. So yeah, that's Xeni by Rebekah Weatherspoon. That's a mouthful. Oh, I forget. I also did want to tell you about a third romance that I read during the year. Definitely want to tell you about What the Hex by Alexis Daria. This is a paranormal romance that is written by and features a Latin main cast of characters. And this is a truly terribly cheesy romance of witches. And it felt very much like early 2000s Charmed witches. That kind of vibe is what it felt like to me. And currently it is tragically only available via audio on Audible. But I know that Daria has been talking about wanting to write more in this world, which I am totally here for. I would love to read more in the Isla Bruja series. And I know that I'm hoping, at least based on her Instagram, that this is going to be transcribed in ebook form. So hopefully it will be available and accessible to more readers. In terms of some tropes, we have some childhood rivals to lovers happening. There's a one bed trope. This takes place in part at like a very magical inn because the main characters are going to a wedding and there's some possession going on. There's an evil foe where they have to solve the crime. So it's all very kitschy, but really, really a fun time. Just really short, 3-hour listen. If you're ever in the mood for that Audible free membership, you should definitely get it for this. Or you can just wait for her to write more in this series because I'm definitely looking forward to more in this series. I've also been watching a lot of Charmed this year. I started my rewatch of Charmed from the very beginning. So this is in part very nostalgic for me. But if you need some nostalgia and you like witches and you like romance, this is the book for you. This is very, very targeted at you. So that's What the Hex. So I think this next section is going to be SFF. And my favorite Octavia Butler from this past year definitely was Wild Seed by Octavia Butler. This is the first in the Patternmaster series. Kind of. I'm not going to get into that today. I read this as a part of the OEB slow read. So thank you so much to Onyx Pages and Jerry and Tati and Isis. And Isis, of course, for putting that on because I really, really love this book. The Patternmaster series is just a really difficult one to kind of translate to you in a few minutes. But of all of them, I think that this one is definitely, it should be classic and it should be canon for SFF in terms of like when you think of characters, godlike characters and themes of like humanity and setting up like a legacy of ancestors, setting up a legacy and a new kind of future and humanity. So that's why I really love this series. It definitely put in perspective what godlike characters could be and maybe should be and how they should be handled in SFF. So in short, this is the story of two supernatural beings, Anyanwu and Doru, who are kind of eternal, kind of immortal, and how they travel and live throughout the centuries to create this new superhuman, powerful telekinetic lineage. That's kind of the short end of it. It's just a really fantastic exploration of character and character flaws. I really loved it a lot and also kind of hated Doro a lot. So he's definitely the idea that I have of like the worst antagonist to ever exist in SFF. He's kind of like the blueprint for that. But yeah, really loved this, I think you should read Wild Seed. So I also read some Silvia Moreno Garcia this year, so you know she's going to be on this list. First up, let's talk about The Beautiful Ones. This is the out of print cover that I have because I purchased it a long time ago and I just read it last year. Along with a lot of other people, you've probably been more familiar with the newer cover that's come out, which is also beautiful. So this book is historical fantasy. It's mostly historical fiction with like a touch of magic. Some of the characters in here have telekinesis, so that's where the magic comes in. But outside of that, in terms of like the plot and like how the journey the characters go throughout the story, it feels very historical fiction, very Jane Austen, reminiscent of those romances. And it follows just some really horrible characters. It follows some characters that are morally gray, and it follows the protagonist Nina, who is just really trying to find her way in the situations that she's placed in. It takes place in France's Belle Epoque era. I think that's what the back jacket says. It's not really important. It follows a main character named Nina, who has telekinesis, and she and Hector is a traveling performer who also has telekinesis, as well as a really horrible person named Victoria, I believe is her name. No, her name is Valerie. I knew it was a V name, but yeah, she's sort of like person kind of in charge and orchestrating things and helping Nina with the courting aspects of what's going on here. It's a really slow burn kind of novel. It's very much more the pace of Gods and Shades of Shadow, if you've read that, more so than I think Mexican Gothic. So I think you need to set your expectations with this book accordingly, because that's kind of what trips up, I think, some readers, and it kind of tripped up me until like I kind of found my stride. So yeah, there's like 3 main characters here, and I think that particularly the dynamics between 2 of the characters got me through this, pushed me through. And sometimes you just need to see the demise of one character and the triumph of another. And that's what this book did. The use of magic here, again, is really cool. I like that it's not what this book is founded on is really on the relationships. And the magic is just kind of a small touch, like an additional, the icing on the cake, I guess you could say. So that's why I really love The Beautiful Ones. My camera cut off on me, so hopefully I didn't miss anything, but I definitely still want to tell you about Prime Meridian by Silvia Moreno Garcia, because she's the only author I have doubled on this list, and I thought that this was just a really perfect science fiction novella. This is a story where really honestly not much happens, but what Silvia Moreno Garcia does best is these explorations of characters that are yearning for more, that are looking for purpose. And in this story, Amelia, the main character, has her eyes set on Mars, because in this world there has been colonization on Mars, and she wants to go and seek out and move and do that. She is in Mexico City and stuck in this really mundane life, some really shitty situations, some really shitty things about life, very bleak outlook on life. And really her own hopes and dreams are just all set on leaving. And I really love that. I don't know what that says about me, but I love when she does that, how she explores that. I really liked a really clever device that is used here. There are interjected chapters of very reminiscent of like space exploration films. I thought that was a neat touch. And I thought that if you're into like those yearning feelings, those oblique, not narcissistic, but like existential, like those existential crises. If you're into that, I mean, maybe you're into it like I am, but that's Prime Meridian by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Then we have The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. This is the first in a new series. I believe it's called the Great Cities series. It follows a multiple main cast of characters that are souls of a city. They each kind of inhabit a different part of New York City, of different borough. And I thought that the characterization of each of the characters was just really cool. I really like that. I don't know what that is, but like having like a character that just is Manhattan, that is the Bronx, that is like I think that's so cool. I'm just saying that this was another fantastic start to a series. I feel like I have this thing where I start a new series by N.K. Jemisin and don't finish, because I still have yet to finish the Broken Earth series, despite loving the first in that series. This is another but I do hope to finish this series because I thought the first was just really great. I think it's just really cool, I guess, to see a group of people from different walks of life come up against a single evil foe to their homes. That's going to be my shit, and no matter what story. But you have N.K. Jemisin writing really awesome battle scenes, and yeah, I'm ready for a sequel. I'm looking for any news about a sequel. So last year I really wanted to read more graphic novels, and I'm really glad that I did because I have a graphic novel section in this favorites video now. The first is The Magic Fish by Trung Nguyen. This is, I think it's a YA graphic, I think it's considered YA graphic novel series about a Vietnamese boy who is trying to tell his mother that he's gay when there isn't a word for it in Vietnamese. This has an incredible story, incredible art. It almost feels like a memoir, but also feels very like fairy tale like, very magical too, because the way that the main character tells his mother about himself, they share fairy tales with one another that are very reminiscent of the things that he's going through in his life. And I recently found out that the author / artist of this work is actually trained and studied art history, which I think is just really amazing. And it makes sense if you've seen the artwork in here. But he tweeted recently that he thinks that having that studied, that background, has helped him think about images as texts in comics. And yeah, definitely see that here. So yeah, I thought that this book just really was a great mixture of myth and storytelling and reality. I think that that is so cool. I think that the color palette, the use of color is just really cool. Just a lot of love for this book. It'll pull on your heartstrings. The ending is great, and looking forward to more art for this artist because their work, The Magic Fish, this was really emotional, really great. Loved it. The second graphic novel I'm going to tell you about is Almost American Girl by Robin Ha. This is a graphic novel memoir about Robin Ha, who is from South Korea, and when she was in her preteens was suddenly moved with her mother to Georgia, and it was a huge culture shock. It was very sudden for her, and a lot of the trauma that she experienced coming of age in America, not knowing English, not having any friends, being completely disconnected from her life against her will. It is a work that she kind of had to bring up a lot of that trauma and kind of work through a lot of the trauma that she had, a lot of the resentment that she had for her mother. So the story focuses a lot on her depression, her anger, and some of the suicidal things that thoughts that she was having at the time in the 90s when she moved from Korea to America. She's also a huge fan of comics, obviously having written and drawn this own memoir herself. So I thought that the incorporation of some of the comic stories was really cool in this memoir as well. But I think that this is like a really cool nonfiction graphic novel. If you're into nonfiction or if you're into memoirs, All American Girl is definitely one you should pick up. All right, now we're moving into the nonfiction favorites that I had last year. These two kind of go hand in hand. The next two I'm going to talk about as nonfiction works, nonfiction essays that are critical of SFF genres. The first being Disfigured by Amanda Ledoux. This has a subtitle of On Fairy Tales, Disability, and Making Space. That's exactly what this is. It's from a disabled author speaking about tropes in fairy tales and fantasy that are very harmful to a lot of disabled people. So in this book, in this work, the author describes fairy tales as particularly as stories that are meant to have like a moral lesson. They're often stories told to children that are supposed to teach you something. They're often supposed to tell you the difference between rights and wrongs. Usually you have hero, triumph over evil, that sort of thing, but often at the expense of disabled people, with a lot of the harmful disabled tropes used in those kinds of stories. This book was really informative. It was really, I think, shifted my thinking in some of those tropes. It gave me a lot of the language for some of the things I had seen before that I have disliked about certain fantasies in the past. And for those reasons, I just think it's one of those texts that any SFF lover out there, any lover particularly of fairy tales, of maybe Disney stories, should pick up and read and just kind of shift your thinking, especially able-bodied people is who I'm talking to, obviously. Those things I think are really important to understand and be able to see more in the future as I read more SFF. So that's why I really loved it. That's why I annotated it. I want to reread and annotate it again, because I definitely agree with the author here. I mean, how we imagine happiness, how we see stories definitely impacts the worlds around us. So the second book in this sort of subgenre of critical SFF nonfiction essays is The Dark Fantastic by Ebony Elizabeth Thomas. This is another formative work for me that I think I will recall and look back on, how race particularly is discussed in this, because this is very focused on the use of Black characters, Black tropes in SFF and speculative fiction. Goodreads described this best, I think, as saying it reveals the diversity crisis in children's and YA media as not only a lack of representation, but a lack of the imagination. Although I wasn't completely invested in some of these essays because I just wasn't a part of some of the fandoms that I was a part of growing up, like a certain wizarding school by a certain author we're not going to talk about, and the Hunger Games, Rue and the Hunger Games, because I remember coming up at a time when the backlash for the casting of Rue was at its peak, when the internet was just like a really horrible place to be. I remember all that, and I think that those critiques in particularly have stuck with me, of how certain characters, particularly Black girls, are seen as ways to progress these stories for other white characters, sacrifices in Rue's case, as being used as sacrifices. So yeah, I just think about this a lot, and I think about how Black characters and Black girls deserve better, not only in the world, but in our imaginations, because they are reflective. The real world is reflective of our imaginations, and it does matter. It's important. So moving to memoirs, definitely need to remind you that Dear Santaran by Koike Emeze was a favorite from last year for sure. I've read almost all their work, I believe, Emeze's work. Doesn't matter what genre they write in, they hit it out of the park every single time. I feel wholly inadequate to tell you to review this book at all. I don't know what else to say about it that I haven't said before. But if you haven't heard about it, it's a collection of essays written and addressed, each of these, to a formative person in their life. They speak about the decisions that they've made in terms of their body, in terms of their writing, what it's like to live in this world, in the flesh, about really important relationships, romantic and non-romantic in their lives. I think if you love Emeze's writing, if you've read their work in the past, or if you just love really emotional, vulnerable memoirs, you could get along with this book as well. The last nonfiction book I have to tell you about is The Disordered Cosmos, and this is by Chanda Prescott Weinstein. This is a book from a Black agender woman physicist, and I love books about science, especially memoirs, science memoirs from scientists, from women of color. This is in particular from a Black scientist, which is even more rare. So really knew that this book had a lot going for it when I picked it up. And even though physics is not my thing, physics was the worst science subject for me, even with my chemistry background, the physics parts completely went over my head. But I didn't really care, because I love how this author writes. It's the culture side of it, and it's the socialist side of science as well, not only the hard scientific science part of it. I feel like I'm just saying science and science over and over again, but this is a book that I want to get once it comes out in paperback, because I definitely want to mark it up and annotate it. I especially like how the author was able to call out the racist theories and just understood truths in science, because that's something that definitely needs to be called out more often and just is accepted amongst her peers and shouldn't be. Like why we call dark matter. Such a simple thing, but why hasn't that been changed? Why hasn't that changed in the near future? I don't know. I also really liked the chapter that she speaks about. I don't know what she calls it, but there's been this discussion I've seen recently about unskilled labor, and how no labor is unskilled, because all of this is contributing to the successes that she's had in science. I really enjoyed that chapter. So yeah, that's The Disordered Cosmos. It's a really great book. You should read it. So the last book I have to tell you about is a picture book. One picture book made it to my favorites list, and that's Stella's Stellar Hair by Yesenia Moises. This is a book from a Dominican American Black author, and it's also the story of a little Black girl with hair that's big hair, and she's having a bad hair day. And it's the wrong day to have a bad hair day because she has a really big event coming up. So she seeks out help from her aunties. And each of her aunties actually lives on a different planet in the solar system. So she takes her hoverboard and travels to each of them. Learns a little bit about the planets. Learns a little bit about traditionally African diasporic hairstyles. And it's a lot of fun. It's a great story. It's so colorful. I like the color scheme here. Is very Lisa Frank. I love that. That's very nostalgic for me. And there's a lot to love about this story. If you're into like this color scheme here, I'll show you a little bit of the pages, the artwork here. I think that you'll definitely get along and love this story too. That's Stella's Stellar Hair. Really great picture book. Okay, and we've made it to the end. So those are all my favorites from this year. 2021 wasn't a great year for me in terms of reading, but I still managed to get a good number of favorites. So I'm happy with that. So a small note about goals. Obviously, I'm still making videos this year, but I don't think I'm going to be setting any goals for myself this year. I'm just not finding them inspiring, and I'm really hoping to just go back to the basics and reading things that I want to read and talking about them as I feel like I want to talk about them. And I say that with the caveat that I have signed up and I hope to participate in this year's BookTube prize for the nonfiction grouping, because that is something I definitely missed last year. I know a lot of great books were in that running for that prize last year, and I missed out on reading some of them. I'm hoping I can talk about those later on this year, but outside of that, no goals. Not doing any goals this year. So we'll see where my rating takes me. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, or maybe been reminded of some great books to pick up this year if you haven't read them already. But that's all I have to tell you about today. So in the comments, I would love to hear what was your favorite book last year? If you can name one, what was your favorite book last year? Let me know. But that's all I have for this video today. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye.